Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freetor. While the February 2010 prison riot at the Horizon Remand Centre in Kingston was perhaps Jamaica's biggest prison riot in living memory, the 2004 prison riot at the Freeport Police Station in Montego Bay was also a frightening experience that threatened to spiral out of control. While the exact date has escaped my memory, and I cannot seem to find the scrapbook with the story I wrote on the incident, I can still remember, without documentation, the incident which saw rioting prisoners taking over the cell block at the Freeport Police Station and threatening to burn down the facility as chaos reigned supreme for several hours. In this edition of Lest You Forget, we will recount the incident that saw several prisoners and police officers being injured before the situation was finally brought under control by a contingent of soldiers and police who were flown in from Kingston. It was about 7:30 p.m. when I got a call from a media colleague that prisoners had taken over the cell block at the Freeport Police Station and had set a section of the building on fire and were seemingly planning a mass breakout. Naturally, as the news editor at the Gleaner's Western Bureau, I rushed off to the location. When I got there, my colleagues Janet Silvera, Nagra Plunkett and Shamit Hepburn were already there. Against the backdrop of siren-blaring fire trucks speeding to the location, my colleagues filled me in on what was taking place as we all watched smoke rising over the cell block and heard angry prisoners hurling bad words and threats at the police, who were clearly panicking as the situation spiraled out of control. As news of the riot spread across Montego Bay, the families and friends of some of the prisoners began converging at the entrance to the police station. There was not a single face that was not covered with either fear or concern. After lingering outside the police station for more than 1 hour, trying to get an official statement from the police, we watched as several lawyers and justices of the peace went in and out of the police station, seemingly trying to get the rampaging prisoners to surrender, all without luck. Finally, news came that Dr. Horace Chang, the Member of Parliament for North West St. James, who the prisoners had requested to speak to, was on his way to the location. When Dr. Chang arrived, members of the media were finally allowed to enter the police station. Dr. Chang and his team went straight to the cell block, where he reportedly tried to convince the prisoners to surrender. But they flatly refused, saying that if they did, they would become lambs to the slaughter at the hands of the police officers they had injured earlier in the day. After Dr. Chang's failed attempt to get the prisoners, who were reportedly being led by 2 men known as Sashman and John Papa, to surrender, he left the police station, telling members of the media that since the prisoners were not prepared to heed his advice, the law would have to take its course. After Dr. Chang left, the Gleaner team encountered Superintendent Paul Ferguson, one of the police officers who was injured by the rioting prisoners. To say he was angry would be an understatement. In between puffing and cigarette after cigarette, Ferguson related a horrifying story, graphically outlining how the prisoners had attacked an officer on the cell block and had taken away the keys to the cell, which they used to free other prisoners from their individual cells. He said that when efforts were made to subdue the prisoners, they became boisterous and began attacking the police with makeshift missiles, including bricks thrown from the wall of the jail. As blood dripped from a wound on his head and a corker that had formed close to the wounds steadily increased in size, Ferguson made it quite clear that reinforcement was on its way and that calm would be restored. At close to 11 p.m., the cussing and the swearing by the agitated prisoners were drowned out by the sounds of helicopters flying overhead. When the aircrafts landed, a large contingent of gas masks-wearing soldiers and policemen, many armed with pickaxe sticks, ran into the police station. Their leader, Superintendent Donald Pusey, asked members of the media to exit the compound as they prepared an assault on the cell block. Within minutes, The entire police station was completely engulfed in tear gas, which was so thick that even the persons across the road from the police station were forced to retreat to quite some distance away. Shortly after, we could hear prisoners crying out, "Murder, murder, murder," as the security forces breached the cell block and began putting down the failed rebellion. Some of the relatives of prisoners were in tears as the screams of "murder, murder" intensified. Within half an hour, the excitement was all over, as except for the prisoners who were still crying, calm was restored. Close to midnight, an ambulance from the Cornwall Regional Hospital drove onto the compound of the police station. Soon, several persons were seen being loaded into the vehicle. Other wounded prisoners were loaded into the back of a police jeep. As the two vehicles drove out of the police station, a man was seen covered in blood on the floor of the police vehicle. He appeared dead. One onlooker shouted out, "A Sashman! Them killed Sashman!" It was subsequently learned that Sashman, who was badly injured, was not dead but had sustained several broken bones and was seemingly pretending to be dead while he was being taken to the hospital. When the soldiers and police reappeared from the cell block, they were no longer wearing their gas masks but were dripping with sweat. Some of the pickaxes had bloodstains glistening on them. Order was restored. The smoke and tear gas were no longer over and over the cell block. The police were now back in control. In looking back at that fateful night of horror and disorder, it was most definitely one of those unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica. Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freetor. Remember to like and subscribe.